When you hear the word hacking, what comes to mind? Probably some shady figure in a hoodie, right? But what if I told you some of the best hackers in the world are actually the good guys? Today, we're diving into the world of ethical hacking. It's kind of like an ethical heist, where the skills of a master thief are used to build stronger fortresses, not to tear them down. So let's get right to it. Is hacking just some harmless fun, or is it a serious crime? Well, the truth is, it's kind of both. It all started back in the 60s as this playful tinkering, just seeing what was possible with new tech. But boy, have things changed. Now that our entire lives are online, I'm talking everything from our bank accounts to our family photos, the stakes are just astronomically high. What used to be a prank can now be a multi-billion-dollar criminal operation.
So yeah, this whole evolution has basically split the hacking world in two. You've got your villains and your heroes. Okay, so on one side, you've got the black hat. This is your classic movie villain, right? They're in it for personal gain, stealing your data, causing chaos. But on the other side, you've got the white hat, the ethical hacker. And here's the crazy part. They use the exact same skills. The only thing, and I mean the only thing that separates them is one single word: permission. And this quote right here, it nails it. Operating without permission is unethical. Operating without a contract is downright stupid and illegal. See, it's not just about a handshake deal. A real, professional, ethical hacker has a contract, a legal document that spells out exactly what they can and can't do. That piece of paper is literally the only thing standing between a security test and a serious federal crime. All right, so let's start our ethical heist. Phase 1, casing the digital joint. Just like in the movies, you don't just run in guns blazing. No, you got to do your homework first. You watch, you listen, you learn everything you possibly can about your target. This is the reconnaissance phase. In the hacking world, we call this footprinting, and the goal is simple. Build a complete blueprint of the target's security. And you want to do it without leaving a single trace, without them ever knowing you were snooping around. You're trying to figure out things like, what kind of software are they running? What are their IP addresses? Who works there? The kind of info that might come in handy later.
So there are basically two ways to do this. First, there's passive gathering. Think of this like being a digital detective. You're digging through public stuff, search engines, social media, news reports. You would be absolutely shocked at what you can find without ever actually touching the company's network. Then there's active gathering. This is where you start to, poke the bear a little bit. You might start directly engaging with a target, maybe even trying to trick an employee into giving up a little piece of the puzzle. And a perfect, kind of scary example of this is something called Google hacking. Now, this isn't about breaking into Google. No way. It's about using Google's own powerful search tools to find stuff that companies have just accidentally left wide open on the internet. With just the right search term, you can find internal documents, private data, and, get this, even live feeds from unsecured webcams. It's wild. All of this is just hiding in plain sight. Okay, recon is done. We've cased the joint. Now for the fun part, finding a way in. This is the exploitation phase. It's time to put all that intel to work and actually break into the system. So what are the common ways in? Well, if you look at this list, you'll see a pattern pretty quick. A lot of these aren't about some super genius code breaking. They're about exploiting, us, people. Shoulder surfing? That's literally just looking over someone's shoulder. Dumpster diving? Yeah, that's exactly what it sounds like. But the biggest one by far, weak passwords. I mean, you can have the most expensive, high-tech security system in the world, but it's totally useless if the password is password123.
So, what actually happens when you type in your password? It's not as simple as you might think. Your computer doesn't just send your password over the internet. That'd be way too risky. Instead, it's like a secret handshake. The server sends your computer a random challenge, a little piece of data called a nonce. Your computer then takes your password, scrambles it up into something called a hash, and uses that hash to solve the challenge. It sends the answer back, and if it's correct, the server lets you in. The whole goal for an attacker is to figure out how to break that secret handshake.
Okay, we're in. But hold on, the heist isn't over. Not even close. See, a real pro doesn't just smash and grab. They're way smarter than that. They want to stay, and they want to stay hidden. This is the post-exploitation phase.
And really, there are two main goals here. First, persistence. You want to create a secret backdoor for yourself, a way to get back in anytime you want, no questions asked. And second, stealth. You have to cover your tracks, erase the security footage, so to speak. Delete the logs, hide your tools. You want to be a ghost. Make it so the good guys never even knew you were there. So how do they do that? Well, one super clever trick is something called alternate data streams. It's this obscure feature in Windows that basically lets you hide a file inside another file, and it's completely invisible. So you could take a nasty bit of malware and tuck it inside a totally harmless-looking document. The file size doesn't change, nothing looks weird, but that malware is just sitting there, dormant, waiting for its moment. And if you want a real-world example of how devastating this can be, just look at the massive Target data breach back in 2013. The attackers got in, planted their malware on the payment systems, and it just sat there for weeks, silently stealing credit card info with every single swipe. By the time they were discovered, 110 million customer accounts had been compromised. It was an absolute catastrophe. Okay, so we've seen how the bad guys pull off the heist. Now, let's flip the script. How do you stop them? It's time to look at the other side of the coin, building and defending that digital fortress. One of the most important tools in a defender's toolkit is the intrusion detection system, or IDS for short. The best way to think of it is as a burglar alarm for the entire network. Now, its main job isn't to stop the bad guys itself. Its job is to spot anything suspicious and then scream its head off, alerting a real person to come and check it out fast. So let's break that down with a simple analogy. Think of a firewall as the big, strong wall around your castle. It's got a gatekeeper, and it only lets approved traffic in or out. Simple enough. The IDS, though, that's the network of security cameras and motion detectors inside the castle walls. It's watching everything that the firewall already let in, looking for shady behavior. Like someone trying to pick the lock to the treasure room. You absolutely need both. One without the other is a huge vulnerability. So after our little ethical heist, what's the big takeaway? Well, it's that cybersecurity isn't something you can just set up and forget about. It's a constant, never-ending war between the attackers and the defenders. And you better believe the stakes are high. We're talking astronomical amounts of money. Back in 2009, a hacking ring used what's called a Trojan horse, basically malware disguised as something legit, to siphon money from thousands of bank accounts. The total amount they're thought to have stolen? $3 billion with a B. That's the kind of payday that keeps the bad guys motivated. And that's why, at the end of the day, cybersecurity is just a relentless arms race. As soon as the defenders build a higher wall, the attackers are already figuring out how to dig a tunnel underneath it. This is exactly why ethical hacking is so incredibly important. It's about beating the criminals to the punch. It's about finding those weak spots yourself before they do. It's about playing offense, not just defense. Which kind of leaves us with one last big question. Think about it. Your entire digital life, your money, your conversations, your memories, it's all stored somewhere, locked behind digital doors. The ethical hacker's job is to go around and test those locks to make sure they're strong. So the question for you is, in a world where your data is everywhere, who do you trust to test the locks?